Pickens. In 1916, we put in place pretty substantial incentives to people to look for gas and oil. It says, you go out and find yourself some gas and oil, we're going to provide some tax breaks. We want you to do that. That's what our country needs and wants. So we did it. It was permanent, been there forever almost, now almost a century. In 1992, we said production tax credit. That's what we want to incentivize you to do, production tax credit. 1992, we put it in place. We extended it 5 times short term. We had it expire 3 times. It's a pathetic, anemic response. In my judgment, this country ought to say, here's where America's headed for a decade. Count on it. The production tax credit, solar, other incentives, count on it for the next decade because here's where America's going. That's what we ought to do. The bill on the floor that we can't even get passed has a 12-month extension, a miserable extension, better than nothing. But I mean, that's not where we ought to go. We ought to go in a much more aggressive way. But the chairman asked the question, Mr. Pickens, and I did not hear the answer specifically. We have tried very hard to get the federal government to create a renewable energy standard. I happen to feel very strongly that we ought to do that. The country ought to say, here's where we aspire to go. And yet we've been unsuccessful, whether it's 10%, 20%, 15%. Do you think that the market system will move in this direction of its own will, or do you think it would be useful for the Congress through a renewable electricity standard to describe a goal?
I think you're going to have to do it. I don't think it's going to go that direction just because people want to do renewables. I think that's, I'm answering the question you asked me, aren't I?
Right.
Okay. Again, what you'll do is you'll go back to the cheapest way to do it is the way it'll be done. I mean, that's the system we live in.
But we affect the price by tax incentives, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And so if you can give some help, but I keep going back to this point. And I think I don't think I made exactly this one, but almost. But the way we've operated here, as far as energy is concerned, the way our country has, it's almost like send us the oil, never mind the cost. And we just kept using more and more oil. And now we're up to 70%. We're in the trap. We are in a trap is where we are. We're caught in the trap. And when we've got to go to renewables, there's no question about it. But when you look at these studies by the DOE, clearly we have energy available to us. Why haven't we used it? We haven't used it. Now comes the leadership that causes that to happen.
Well, every addiction ends in a trap, and the question is there public policy that leads us out of this in a different direction? You're correct in my judgment that the market system moves to the cheapest form of energy.
It does.
But we also can have a significant impact about what energy, with respect to what is the price of energy. The price of a gallon of gas is not $4. It's probably about $10 if you factor in the cost of defense and other things that we're spending in the free world.
Right.
But we have an impact on what the price can be with respect to incentives. We put them in place a century ago for oil and gas. We can, in my judgment, send a much stronger signal for renewables than we've done.
I agree. I think you can send a stronger message on renewables, but we know we have it. Finding oil and gas is a tough deal. I know. I've been in that business for over 50 years, and I found a lot of oil and gas, but it's been expensive at times, very, very expensive. You can drill a lot of dry holes. I will say this: you won't have anybody before you this year that has drilled more dry holes than I have.
Mr. President, my time has expired, but I wanted to make one additional point. Wind and solar are both intermittent forms of energy, but there are ways to firm up an intermittent form of energy. And we have a project in North Dakota that I sponsored in which we're taking energy from the wind, producing electricity through electrolysis, separating hydrogen from water, and storing hydrogen for vehicle use. You can take an intermittent energy source and produce vehicle fuel in terms of hydrogen. So there's a lot of things we can do with wind, and it's not hard to find wind, at least in North Dakota.
That's right. You have one of the best resources of any place in the country.
Department of Energy says it's the Saudi Arabia of wind. We are number 1 in wind, and we're number 50 in trees. So there's nothing there to break the wind.
My ranch is in Panhandle, Texas, and I've lied about wind forever, that it doesn't blow as much as you all think it does. That's what I always say. And now I say, can you believe it? This wind is great. And so it's, just different times in your life.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pickens, there are a number of people, and I think you heard Senator Reid and myself and others up here, who see huge potential in sustainable energy if we can get our hands on and solve the transmission problem. So let me start off by asking you, if we got our act together, you talked about wind in the Midwest, Senator Reid talked about solar thermal in the Southwest. What percentage of electricity in this country could be generated by sustainable energy? I think the folks from the Western Governors Association were talking about 17% within the reasonable future coming from solar thermal in the western part of this country. What do you think?
Okay, if you look at that map right across the top, it says that 20%. Now, that's from the DOE, and we do not disagree with that number.
By when? 20% by when?
That's right. That's what it says across the top there.
20% by 2020?
No, they say 2030, but I think you can beat that.
Okay.
Where we differ with them is how quick it could be accomplished. And if you called it an emergency, which I believe it is that, I think you could do the 20% in less than 10 years.
Huh.
But you've got to do it quick because you have so much outflow of money.
Right. You, I know, have been focusing on wind. What do you see the potential of solar?
I'm not an authority. I'm pretty good on wind. I'm not that good on solar. I'm real good on oil and gas. But let me tell you that some people really, for me to go to renewables, a geologist who's been in oil and gas his whole life, they're somewhat surprised and astounded but this is where we have to go. But quick answer on solar, it's there. There's no question it's there. Now, it's not as cheap, and those things are going to happen. If you'll give the incentives and tell them this is the direction you want. Just look what the president did for ethanol. The president came out for ethanol, and I mean ethanol happened. It went, and it probably was not the best idea I've ever seen, but anyway, it's...
All right, let me ask you this. Obviously, we are dealing now with two international crises, that is global warming and the high price of fuel. In terms of wind, which you do know a lot about, how cost competitive is it today with other sources of energy?
The wind is, it's competitive. I think that the wind is, I'm going to stick my neck out here, but I believe when you take coal and bring it up to clean it up and everything else, I think that wind is competitive with coal.
So today, not in the future, what you're saying?
I'm saying today.
Today, this is an extraordinary statement that he's saying today wind is cost competitive or maybe cheaper than coal. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that, yes.
Well, that's it. Let me ask you another thing. You know a little bit about oil, right?
About what?
Oil. You've heard of oil.
I'm ready.
All right. Now, it is interesting. Many of our friends, I was on 2 television shows the other day, and the kind of conservative commentators were saying, the solution is drill, drill, drill. We're going to solve all of our problems if we just drill for all the oil that is in the United States. And I heard you mention several times ago you believe in peak oil. Are we capable of drilling our way out of this crisis?
Well, let me take you on a little history. But we peaked in the United States at 10 million barrels a day in 1970. We're now producing 5 million barrels a day. Could we have kept that at 10? There's no way that we had the resources to do that. An average oil well in the United States is 5 barrels a day. An average oil well in Saudi Arabia is 5,000 barrels a day. The Saudis are lifting 6 barrels of water with every barrel of oil, which tells me they're mature. That's mature. The Russians are lifting 9 barrels of water with every barrel of oil. We're lifting over 100 barrels of water with every barrel of oil. So we are mature. Now, could we drill our way out of it? No, there's no way you can do that. I don't agree with the USGS that there's 86 billion barrels of oil off the east and west coast of the United States. Those guys work on that a lot more than I do, so I'm not going to say it's a ridiculous number. I just don't agree with it. When I look at ANWR, I would look at ANWR and feel like it may be time. I laughed about it last night at dinner. I said, if I was one of the senators that voted against ANWR, I would almost see the American people today, it is shifting, and the American people are wanting to do something, and they don't know for sure what it is, but they're voting for ANWR. I saw a poll the other day, 57%. And I said, I almost think if I was one of those senators who voted against it, I'd say, you know, back there when those Republicans were trying to get me to do ANWR at $20 a barrel, it was too cheap. But now at $120 a barrel, I may be more interested in doing it. So maybe we're coming around to a point where the value of the oil at ANWR, and I'm not one that believes there's 16 billion barrels at ANWR either. There was 14 billion at Prudhoe Bay, which is the largest field we ever had in the United States. But ANWR does not have the same sediments because you cross a fault going east of Prudhoe Bay. See, I know this subject.
All right, but let me just
But I don't think the oil at ANWR is anything like 16 billion. So don't have the idea that our problems will be solved with a big discovery.
I surely don't. Mr. Howley, what were your